Hey everyone, welcome back to Shattering Ceilings. It's Lauren.
And Megan. And today we are doing a recap.
Yes. So we had some amazing people on our show over the past few months, and we wanted to just kind of highlight some of the amazing things that we took away from those interviews since we are wrapping up 2022. Kind of
Mm-hmm.
crazy.
Yeah. And the reason why we chose to do this, guys, is because while everyone that we've had on this podcast so far is a normal person, these are just people that are in our lives, right? Our friends that and family for Lauren,
Hmm.
that have really just dug deep, right, in life and decided that they want to get the most out of it and not just go through the motions. So I guess the point is that at no matter what point in your life, right, or who you are, where you're starting from, what age, what experience, whatever, like you are capable of whatever the fuck you want. And these
Hmm.
people are really great examples of that. So
Hmm.
we hope you enjoy this episode and we're
Yeah.
going to dive into it.
I love that too, Meg, just because we are wrapping up 2022 and a lot of us are going to be reflecting about what we want for 2023. And I think that's such a
Mm-hmm.
good point, to really point out that you can have whatever you want, right? And I think there were so many great examples of people actually deciding differently, right? A lot of the interviews
Yeah.
we heard from Gabby and Adam deciding that they went differently and then making those changes to move
Mm-hmm.
forward in the path that they really want to go down.
Yeah.
So our very, not our first guest, but our second guest was Gabby DeHaan, our friend
Yes.
from New York, right?
Sweet, sweet Gabs.
Yes, sweet Gabs. And we talked a lot about, her struggle with body dysmorphia and her eating disorder and really how identity played, a big factor into that. And I think that we can all relate to I don't know, Meg, what do you think? At some point, do you believe that most people kind of struggle with identity in some kind of form?
I mean, I would say so. Yeah. Whether it's like, going from an athlete to not an athlete or going from
Mm.
single to in partnership or,
Mhm.
being a student to being an adult in the workforce, right?
Mhm.
Like in some way, we all have to shift from one version of ourselves to another.
Mhm.
Becoming a mom, that was a big
That
conversation
was
that
a
we had
big
with
one.
Gabby, which,
Yeah.
like, I know I can totally relate to.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, really figuring out who you are and in some cases like Adam too because Adam he was even though you guys heard from him second as a second male on our show, he actually we caught up with him first. He
Hmm.
also talked about the struggle going from something, from a role, from an identity to not having that identity. And I think that's another
Hmm.
common one, that we see in the work field or as an athlete, or even like, so you talked about going from single to partnership, or it can be the other way around, partnership to being
Absolutely.
single, right? And what that looks like.
Yeah. I mean, change. I feel like we say this all the time, like in at least in this podcast, like something that we are guaranteed is change.
Mm-hmm.
And navigating that from that sense of self, like who am I in this change, can
Mm-hmm.
be really difficult and really beautiful. Like we
Yeah.
had this example given to us by one of my teachers. I think I've talked about her before, Diane Connolly. And it's probably a story or something that's been around in the world. I don't think that she was the originator of it,
Mm-hmm.
but she said, the impact somebody has in the world is dependent on their perspective. So
Mm.
maybe you're talking like specifically construction workers, guys, right? So one person is a bricklayer and sees himself as a bricklayer, mundane, nothing special, right? And another guy's building a church, right?
Mm.
Like there's a difference in how that feels, right? And
Yeah.
another person's not only like making a church, building a church, like he's creating a safe space for people to come in and practice something that's very important to them, right? To connect with
Right.
their God. And so the way that they're all doing the same thing, they're all laying bricks, but the way they hold what they're doing and think
Mm-hmm.
about what they're doing makes it completely different,
Mm-hmm.
you
Because
know?
go back to like, what we talked about yesterday. I know Meg and I were on we had a session in our coaching container, and one of the things that was said that, the world really is about your perception of it.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and how you move through things. Obviously, it's all based upon your perception. And some obviously are going to, just have a totally different, like you said, be doing the same thing, but have a totally different outlook on what it is that they're
Yeah,
doing. And that then, like, it's a different meaning to them, right?
totally. And I
Different
think that can
priority.
change within, like, yourself too, right? Like, on days that I'm waking up and feeling great and, like, I'm contributing to the world, my perspective of myself may be very different from a day that, like, I don't know, maybe I'm doing some of the back end work on my business. Like, it feels
Mhm.
small and monotonous and
Mhm.
menial, but all of those things are allowing me to provide a service that really makes a difference in people's lives, right? So,
Mhm.
like, being able to hold that perspective even when you're doing the less glamorous aspects of
Mhm.
life,
Mhm.
can really make it easier to move through those hard times, or,
Mhm.
the boring, the mundane, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be hard.
Right.
um it's all about how
Yeah.
we carry it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think identity has a lot to do with too, like, it's kind of like that outside persona of ourselves, right? That sometimes we invest so much in, like wanting to be known as this person or for that thing. And we forget that it's really just all about like who we are, right? And I think too,
Totally.
like the worth, we were already given our worth. You know what I mean? Like no one has to qualify that for us. No thing can
Right.
qualify us. But I think a lot of times, I know what happened to me and it probably still will at times, right? Where I have felt unworthy because I didn't do a certain thing or on the opposite, I felt worthy because I was able to accomplish a certain thing and that can really
Right,
screw
tying
you
your
up
worth to
too.
things besides just, like, who you are innately as a person.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I think that trips up a lot of people.
totally. I mean, I know that even still today, something that I'm constantly in practice with is not allowing my worth
Mhm.
to, be based on the quality of what I'm producing.
Mhm.
Like, there's this level of, like, well, if I'm gonna do this, it has to be the best, and, like, reality is I
Mhm.
haven't put in the time, I haven't put in the work. If I'm starting a business and it's my first business ever, it's
Mhm.
not gonna go like somebody who's done 3, 4, 5 businesses, has been an entrepreneur for 20 years, like,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
I still struggle with having that expectation for myself, and even if
Yeah.
no one else is making me feel less than, or like what I'm producing isn't good enough, I still struggle with it. Like, with, my identity lies in
Yeah.
that way too much.
Right, which is, something else we heard a lot from obviously what we've talked about, but our guests too is like, that self-talk, how
Mhm.
you treat yourself is like so important because I mean, we've heard from a lot of again, our interviewees that like they really beat themselves up at times or, they had to pull themselves out and really put priority in to those self-care, practices daily. I mean, I know I do
Yeah.
it daily. I have to remind myself daily of certain things too, because it's so easy to go down that path,
Yeah.
and kind of go to negative town.
I feel like Brenna was a really good example of that, actually. Like, when we asked them, her and Alex, like, what societal pressures they felt. I don't know if you remember this, Laura, but, like, she came back to herself. Like, she wasn't showing up enough. She
Yeah,
wasn't
you're
doing enough.
right.
And we chose her to be on the podcast because we see her as someone that is, like,
Yeah.
going above and beyond in the way that
And
she
so
shows up for
thoughtful.
people.
Yeah.
So thoughtful. And that was
Right?
something that she was hard on herself for, like, something that she's great at in
I
reality.
know, I know.
It's
Isn't that
crazy.
crazy? It is crazy. I was just gonna say that. Like, yeah, I mean, and that's again what we have to be really careful of. And um, yeah, that interview was really fun that we had with Brenna and Alex. I mean, we laughed a lot. It was a
Yeah.
long one. We're gonna break it up into two parts. But
Yeah.
it was refreshing to see their perspective on things. I mean, um, I both think that they're very good at being present, a lot more than I was at that age.
Yeah.
Like they are both 25, they're both about to be 26 soon in the new year anyway. And
Mhm.
yeah, like it was nice to see that level of consciousness between them because I think they are also very aware of where they're spending their time and who they're spending their time with, which again, at that age I just wasn't
Yes.
I wasn't really awake to that.
Yeah. I feel like I had a lot of practices that I was, like, on the journey and starting to understand it myself, but didn't understand yet, like, the energy leaks, if you will, of putting
Mm,
effort and time into a relationship or a job or a project or whatever that really didn't align with who I wanted to be, or
Mm-hmm.
kept, you know, made it more difficult for me to stay
Mm-hmm.
yeah, on task, I guess.
Yeah, I think that they exude patience too. Like I feel like
Mm.
listening to them, like, you talk to some people and even myself at times, and probably you can relate to, where you're like, it's like you're on that journey. You're on that mission to like get something done or get somewhere, get whatever degree, whatever it is. And they just seemed more at peace with the timeline. Like it wasn't a rush.
Mm.
And I wonder
Oh
too,
yeah.
Meg, is that, I mean, that could be the difference in, we're only 10 years older, but I guess it is kind of like a generation. I don't know. Is that considered a generation?
Yeah, I would say
Like,
so. I mean, they both,
I
you
don't
know.
know. Like we have children, obviously, and my son is 9, and so basically I was almost having babies at their age, you know what I mean? And so, I mean, you too, right? I think
Yeah, I was
around that.
27.
Yeah, I was
So just 2
27 when I
years
had
older than
Wyatt.
them.
Mm-hmm. So I think too, it's like, we were out of the house. You know what I mean? We were on that, like we had to
Oh yeah,
figure it
just totally
out.
different.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And
Whereas
I think
they're just getting
like
out now, which is
yeah,
not
and like you're
just,
saying
but
with patience, like
Mhm,
not only with themselves, but like
mhm,
other people too. There was something we were talking
mhm,
about in our coaching container yesterday about like letting go of like not just the self-criticalness, but like being critical of other people and
mhm,
allowing people to be exactly as they are without judging. And that was something that I really, at least in their presence, I really feel from
mhm.
Brenna and Alex was like, yes, like they were focused on themselves and their own personal growth, but not in a way that was judgmental or belittling
Yeah,
to other people. Like there
right.
was no expectation of other people to be living in a certain way. And like I totally know I can get critical. You know,
Yeah,
like I
I mean,
see other people doing things differently and
guilty.
I'm like, okay, why are we doing this? Right. And
Right.
like that's all part of the journey, right? Not
Right.
only just letting go of self-judgment, but judgment of others.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Adam, going back to Adam, I mean, I feel really good at
Oh,
that. He's
yeah.
definitely called me on it sometimes. And, yeah, I don't know why we do that. Like the whole comparison thing. You know what I mean? I'm not really sure where that comes
I don't
from.
know.
I
I
don't
mean,
know
I think
either.
it can come from a good place too. Like to speak for myself, like I don't necessarily think that I'm
Yeah.
judging people like you're bad or whatever because
Sure.
you're
I
not
think the
doing this. It's
same.
like you see where it could be useful or
Yes.
helpful. And I want to be
Mhm.
such a helper. Like, but it's
Yeah.
not my fucking job,
Eh,
you know?
Same. Same. I mean, that was basically what Danielle told me a few weeks ago, when I had my human design reading, was like, you need to stop feeling like you need to have the answers, or feel like people need to understand, or
Hmm.
feel like people need to have the passion that, you think they should. And it's just, and again, it doesn't come from, like you said, it's not a negative thing. Like I don't look at people and judge in a bad way. It's just like, don't you want this
Right.
level of, awareness or whatever? And again, that's not my job. And they're they're not there yet for whatever reason, and that's their
Right. Or
journey,
maybe they never will. Right. It's not their fucking path. It may
Right.
not be everybody's path to come and try to like have their nutrition on point, have their daily routine on point. Like maybe they're just here to get the most enjoyment out of life possible. And like, who
Yeah.
are we to say that it should be otherwise?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. I agree with that. And I think Adam did a really good job, when he was talking about like his coaching, right? And how
Mm,
his own journey of discovery, like again, like taking, that identity that he had as an athlete and really recognizing his own power as just being him. And, again, like all the different things that he's gone through and experienced, and then taken it and like really helped his students just kind of like be present and recognize
yes.
again their own worth, that it's not in how they perform, or, yeah, this is going on and you're going through maybe like failing a test or whatever it may be, but like, what else are you really good at, like right now, and like
Right.
what really means the most in this moment, like kind of bringing it back to awareness. And I think that's something that we all, I know for myself, could totally use help in, is like just be here now, you know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think when I think of Adam and the little bit of time that I've known him, I really like feel like patience and compassion and like
Mm.
like deep understanding that
Yes.
happens because he's able to be present and takes the time, has practiced in being present and really
Mhm.
seeing each individual athlete for who they are and like what a fucking gift to the world.
Right.
Like God, could you imagine if we all just practiced that a little bit more in our daily life? Slowing
Yeah.
down so that we could
Slowing
be
down.
like, have that patience, have that understanding, and just like, yeah, rather than having the like, oh, I wish you would do this faster. Or, I mean, I do it as a mom. I'm like, hurry up, we got to get to school.
I
Like,
mean,
missing the
every
fact that my
day.
kid is like, maybe they're just really having a hard time picking out socks that day, which
Yeah.
I don't get, but as a 4-year-old might be a really big fucking deal. Do you want
It,
orange dinosaurs or blue
I
dinosaurs?
mean, that is a big deal, right? And then what we have to go further in thinking is, oh, it could be like, yeah, they want to pick out whatever color, but then that goes back to like they're trying to establish their independence, right?
For
So like
sure.
that's like the bigger thing. And letting them have choices and things like that. So yeah, like
Yeah. Yeah, it can happen at any age, right? Whether you're
mhm.
working with college athletes or
Mhm.
your own toddlers, like, or nieces, nephews, younger brother or sister, like whatever it is, like, yeah, like, oh, okay, I feel this need to be rushed, right?
Mhm.
Because who knows what's going on for Adam when
Mhm.
maybe he's got a really rush day, maybe he's got to be out of practice exactly at 6 to get to the next practice at 6:15,
Right.
and manages to still be able to slow down enough to be present,
Mhm.
like put his stuff
Mhm.
aside to see what's going on. I think that's really
Yeah.
cool.
I think that is
Um,
really cool. It makes you really feel like seen and like, like there's nothing better than that in my opinion. Like
mm,
having someone really see you for what you are, who you are,
yeah.
and just to be there with
And see
you.
where you're struggling. Like,
Mhm.
Gab said I remember in her episode, she's like, I look back at pictures where I see I'm like, man, that girl was struggling.
Yeah, and she
Why
wishes
wasn't
that some
anybody checking in? Yeah, like
mhm. And this
taking
is the
that gift of
season.
presence.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Ugh,
not just I
yeah.
mean, all the time. All the time, we should, really work on, seeing people for where they're at and if we can help, even if it's just a kind word or just like, "Hey, I'm here. I see you. I'm
Hmm.
with you here." Um, but especially this time of year, there's a lot of people that are feeling like that struggle and to slow down when we are in the season of like, "Whew, we got lots to do," right? Lots to do
Yes.
to get
Oh,
done
I'm
for this.
feeling that so hard this week.
Oh, I know, me too. The countdown is on. But
Hmm.
yeah, like just slowing down and giving, people that space that they need and
Yeah.
again that compassion that they really desire. They just don't know how to express it sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, kind of to jump subjects a little bit, but
Mhm.
I feel like this is a great conversation and we do want to kind of review, what we did with
Mhm.
our
Mhm.
interviewees, like
Mhm.
something that I think across the board um was true for all of the people that we've had on here is really like stepping into like living authentically, like just being
Mm.
themselves, like
Yes.
unapologetically.
Yeah.
Like Adam talked about that with like that change in self identity and um I mean, he made some hard turns in life, right? Like
Mhm.
going
And
from an
like that's
athlete to not an athlete, going
courageous.
back for
Holy shit,
sure.
the stuff that he did, right?
Yeah.
Like yeah, I mean, listen, to be a diver is that's brave. I don't
Right.
know.
To be an
Do you know I
athlete
don't
and
know how
all
to
at that
dive?
level.
I don't know. I didn't
No,
tell
me
him that.
neither.
You don't know how to dive either? Okay,
I
I'm not
mean, I
alone.
can I don't know.
I don't
I
know.
guess I learned when I was like a kid, but I haven't tried it in 20 years.
Yeah, I I,
I
I
wouldn't
don't
know
know
it's
how
a
to
tip.
dive. But to dive a high dive,
Right.
that seems like some scary shit. You know what I mean?
Laura and I'd be over there belly flopping.
I would.
Cannonball.
Oh yeah, cannonball. Hell yeah. Um, but yeah, and he did it a few times, and he's
Yeah.
still shattering his ceilings and really stepping out into that leap of faith.
Yeah. And Gabby, like speaking on this platform about something that was really, really
Yeah.
difficult for her that she's, carried through
Yeah.
most of her life with her body
Gosh.
image and stuff, like
Mm. Told
even
the
just
whole
being on
world.
this podcast. Yeah, yeah. Because one day
Yeah,
this the whole world's gonna hear this.
I
Um,
know. Mhm.
yeah, just like, it may not seem like a big deal. She said yes to being on a podcast, not
Right.
knowing what we were gonna talk about, but like that ability to, even in an uncomfortable situation,
Mhm.
um, just be yourself. Because guys, what you've heard of Gab on this podcast, like that is her.
Mhm.
She is that bad bitch. Like that is
She
Gabby.
is. That's all her language. Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
So true to herself.
Yeah. And I think too, and she said this, it's freeing.
Mm,
Like just to
yes.
just be yourself and to live authentically. Like there's
Yeah.
nothing that's better than that. You know what I mean? Taking off all the
Right.
masks
Oh,
And
and, like,
even though
saying stuff out loud sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, that's
Keep
okay.
going.
No, I was just saying, yeah, taking off the mask, and um, yeah, go ahead. Sorry. What were you
Oh,
gonna say?
that's okay. So, like, our coaching call is so present on my mind, like,
It is same.
something that I have been practicing lately, and Jocelyn talked about it a little bit yesterday, is, like, calling out those places that feel yucky, like Gabby speaking
Yeah.
the truth about, like, her body image issues can help relieve so much shame that we carry around it, because
Ugh,
now it's out in the world, right? It's not this dirty little secret that you carry around with you every day.
that shit's hard.
It
That's like
is.
draining, and like to have to. I mean, think about to cover up something like that.
Mhm.
For years and years and years. Like that's probably a decision that you have to make almost daily. You know what I mean? To cover up
Totally.
something like that.
With small and large things. Like, girl, I'm training right now, and the girl that I shadowed yesterday, um, was teaching about the doshas. So, like, I'm training as a yoga instructor, in a hospital, like, setting. So she's teaching, and, like, halfway through the class, and I was so like, it was such a great moment. I was like, I am gonna love working at this place. 'Cause she looked over at me, she's like, I teach this all the time, and just something about you being here, like, I'm feeling a little flustered and, like, nervous. And we're in the middle of a class full of other adults that she's supposed to be like the authority presence there, right? She's teaching these people, most of which were older than her, both of us. Um, and the whole class changed after that, because once she got it off of her chest that she was feeling a little
Mm,
nervous, right, from
yeah.
being observed in that way, like, it
Mhm.
opened up so much space.
I love that, and I always say, like, when I'm, with my business and I have to train, new people about things, and I always say, it's better to just come out and say, "Hey, I'm a little nervous."
Oh, call it out. Yeah.
I do it all the time to people too, like, "Hey, like, don't think I'm a weirdo." You know what I mean? Or
Right.
whatever. And then I just say what I wanna say because, yeah, it is. It's freeing, You
Mhm.
get it off your chest and it's out there in the open and, then it's like not your responsibility anymore. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
another thing, like how people see it, how they understand it, whatever it may be, that's not your job. It's not your job to
Right.
worry about it, you
You
know?
take a lot of pressure, and it's a great point of connection. Like, we're all human. We've all
Yes.
been in situations where we feel uncomfortable. We've all held dirty little secrets about our life. Like,
Mhm.
putting that out there, I think, is a really great way to connect with whoever you're around, where, maybe you're feeling nervous because you're in a new group of friends, or, whatever it is, to just say, hey, like,
Mhm.
hey, I'm a little nervous. Or, I'm feeling whatever, XYZ. Like, then
Mhm.
everybody's like, oh, yeah, I've been there. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
We're not
Mhm.
judging you. We're, whatever. You're fine. Like,
Yeah.
I've not been in a situation yet, and I practice this a lot because I'm definite, like I said before, like the perfectionism, right? Like, I'm always worried that what I'm gonna do is not good enough.
Mhm.
So, never since I started calling it out has anybody been like, "Well, you're not good enough."
That's
Like,
true.
it's
Mhm.
never happened. They've all been like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
Like, and so supportive. And I think that's something that you'll find is, like, people are really way more supportive than you think they are, no matter what background we come from, no matter what life
Mhm.
experiences we've had. Like, that's a commonality that we all share, is we all have our own insecurities.
Yeah. It's
People
so
can relate.
true. And you're right, it's such a great connection point because then once you do it, right, it lowers everyone's wall, and then that's when the real connection
Yes.
starts, and you
Yeah,
can
because people
talk
are like, "Oh, now
freely.
I can say what I'm feeling caught up
Mm,
about if, they
yeah.
shared." Now, like,
Mhm.
you're taking the lead.
Yeah, yeah. And you really do shine differently when you can be authentic,
Mhm.
And other
Yeah,
and really, what is the point if you're not, right? Like,
I
especially
know.
around other people trying to make connection, there's no point if you're not being authentic.
No,
Um
and I think a great example of that was in Alex and Brenna's, interview, when, like, I can't remember what Alex is talking about, calling Brenna out on Instagram, and then he
Mhm.
stopped in the middle and was like, "Do I do that?" Like, that took so much, I think, balls to
Mhm.
actually, like, ask for that feedback, not just in a private room between the two of them, but, like, we were there in that conversation. It's something that was gonna be aired, and he's like, "But
Mm,
do I do that?" And she's like, "What do you mean?"
mm.
And then opened up the conversation about it, and that, like, check, that's something he doesn't have to be self-conscious about anymore.
Right, right, right. And also, I think it was almost too not asking for permission, but making sure that he was respectful too. Like it's
For
almost like he
sure.
he wanted her to know that he's not doing it obviously out of like ill will or anything like that. Like he's doing it
Yeah.
from like just like a genuine helpful perspective. And,
Yeah, it was
you
such a
know,
great example of, like, healthy fucking communication.
yeah,
Like, oh,
I mean, let's check in with them in another few years and see where
I
they're at.
know. I know. Nobody sent us feedback. Who thinks they're gonna get married?
I
Lauren
would,
and I are still
yes.
on the train.
Yes, I'm on the train for that. I will have a front row seat at that wedding. I'm sure it will
Yes, you're
be
like, "Thank you."
fabulous. Brenna will be in like oh my gosh, she's gonna be a stunning bride, by the way.
I
She's
know.
freaking gorgeous.
She's so yes, that too, and so fashionable.
Oh my goodness. And I
The
mean,
cutest.
talk about fun. If
Yeah.
Alex, whatever wedding he's gonna be at or in, or
Oh my god,
obviously the
such a
groom,
good time.
always a good time. Always a
Yeah.
good time.
If you couldn't tell.
Yeah. Yeah, right. It's a lot of good times with him. Um, so another thing too, that although it may haven't come across as clear, but I think another thing that like you can see through all of the episodes that we had was there was a lot of talk about boundaries. Maybe not the word boundaries is
Mm.
used, but there are boundaries in each of the, people that we interviewed that they set either for themselves or for other people. It's been a hot topic of mine, I feel like, for the past few months, and I feel like I'm getting better. And like that's another thing too. Like, just to even use my own example, like I initially rejected the idea, right? Meg knows this. Like we've talked a
Yeah.
lot about it, and I've been like, ugh, boundaries, don't like them. And then it's like as we've gone through listening to different podcasts, our own podcasts, reading, coaching courses, like all the different things.
Mhm.
Look how long it took me to finally be like, "Oh, and now I'm implementing them." I mean, it didn't take that
Mhm.
long. What a matter of a couple months. But right, like
For
I
you,
think
that's long.
you're probably right. But, it just goes to kind of show too like even in this journey with podcasting or just self-growth, any of those kind of things, right? Like my hope is that, over the course of the last 6 months that we've been doing this, that you were able to maybe be introduced to some ideas. And maybe at
Mm.
first you were like, "Oh, I don't know about that," but over the past 6 months, like maybe you've gotten more comfortable with learning about it, or maybe you even started implementing it yourself. And it's really at this point in the game now, like take a look back at the last 6 months. Like what has changed? Where have you really grown? And again, to go back to boundaries, like seeing Brenna and Alex, like they do have really healthy boundaries, I feel like around relationships,
Mhm.
around work-life balance, like really good.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree with
Um,
that.
and Gabby's implementing her own too when it comes to, I feel like same thing, relationships, how she holds herself,
Mhm.
and then same thing with Adam. I mean, he was talking about like, even with his work-life balance, like he has implemented new boundaries. And remember he was talking about his boss is so much more respectful now that he has clear defined boundaries, right?
Yes.
And I think that's like, what we all have to remember is people will respect us when we hold,
Yeah, and it
that
can be
boundary that's
difficult.
important.
It's not easy.
No.
And you can be great at holding boundaries in one aspect of your life and not others.
Mhm.
Um, but
That's
it's okay
true.
to be a beginner at it.
Yeah.
And like every new situation you walk into is going to require you to be a beginner at that. I'm doing that right now. I asked off for my birthday today and I am per diem. Like I get to make my schedule, right? But I'm like, is that okay? And my boss looked at me and she's like, yes. If you don't want to work on your birthday, then don't work on your birthday. And it took her saying that for me to be like, right. I can set a boundary. Shit. Like,
Mhm.
so it's okay to be a beginner. I feel like I'm good at that in certain parts of my life. And being in a corporate setting again is
Mm.
clearly a space where I'm a beginner. So
Mhm.
make mistakes. None of these people that
Mhm.
we're talking about were just excellent at everything from the start. It's things that they've learned along the way
Mhm.
and practiced over and over and over again to get better at.
And they're still practicing. I mean, that's another
Hell
big
yeah.
takeaway from everybody we talked to about and all the things, people that are on the show. Each one of them really hold the priority for growth and
Mhm.
doing things to implement that growth, right? And foster that growth, I should say. Um daily,
Yeah.
daily things. And I think that that's so important, and that you don't have to do all the things, and you don't have to do it every day. I mean, we've said before too, like I'm someone who will go in for, you know, an hour, sometimes more if I'm listening to podcasts, because I consider that, you know, learning. And then, you know, whereas Meg was like, you know, maybe I get in 15 minutes a day. You know what I mean? Like, and that's great too, because it's all, you know, compounding on, you know, the next thing. So,
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like doing things externally, right? Like you don't have to
right.
wake up every day with a checklist like, okay, today I
Mm-mm.
practiced boundaries, check. Today I did self-care, check. Like
Right.
noticing, we keep talking about presence and intentionality. Like as you get
Mm.
more present in each like aspect of your day, you'll see
Mhm.
those opportunities show up. I didn't know I'd be practicing boundaries in that way at work today. And then it showed up and I was like,
Mhm.
oh, right. Okay, this is an
Mhm.
opportunity to
Mhm.
set boundaries. And
Mhm.
so you get those little pings and you're like, oh, okay, this is it. Like this is a moment of growth. This is a moment I'm
Yeah.
in practice, right? And what you're in practice with one day maybe is totally different than what you're in practice. If you're sitting at home alone and not
Mhm.
interacting with anybody, you may not need to practice boundaries much that day, you
And
know?
I think it's so important to celebrate that, right?
Mm,
To be present and aware that those things are like just naturally popping up for you. Like you practice it today, like, oh, you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
celebrate that, because again, what you focus on does grow too. So the more that you focus on those celebrations and being excited about them and happy for them, you're just going to bring more of that into your life. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So with that, I think that's, you know, we wrapped a lot of, I mean, there's so much more if you guys, you know, go back and listen to. I know I love to go back and listen to our interviews and things like that. But I think that's pretty much, you know, the gist of these interviews. And I'm excited for the next set that we have planned. We do have some
Hmm.
awesome ones already planned
We
for,
got some goodies.
yeah, 2023. And just to remind you, I know we mentioned this in the last couple podcasts too. We are setting up our Voxer group for 2023 about
Hmm.
vision and you know, again, what do you desire in your life? Where do you want to go? Like maybe you're starting to really think of that now. You know, we got 2 weeks left in this year and you maybe even really reflecting, and now you're thinking, you know, to the next year and really what you want in your life. So we're going to be setting that up so that all together we can do this and it'll be a lot more fun too.
Yes.
So,
And if you are hearing this and you know that you want to be a part of the Voxer,
mhm,
don't wait for us to set something up formally.
mhm,
Reach out to us on Instagram, okay,
yeah,
at Shattering Ceilings Pod, and let us know, and we'll make sure that you're on the list and you have all of the information that you need.
mhm,
Um, Before we go, I do want to give one little call to
mhm,
action.
mhm,
Um, in the spirit of reflection and celebrating yourself, like when you're listening to this, I
mhm,
want you to take a second just to celebrate yourself, really celebrate yourself for something that you have noticed as a point of growth in your life. Maybe
mhm,
today, maybe this week, over the last couple of months, whatever it is. But just take some time to like check in with yourself and really acknowledge yourself for all the growth that you're doing. Because even if it's not something that you're super conscious of yet, maybe we're very new on our journey.
mhm.
I promise you that you're making growth somewhere. And as Lauren said, what you focus on grows. So
Mhm.
take the time to figure it out.
I love that. And when you do, just DM us what you're celebrating, because we would love to celebrate it with you and send
Yes.
you all those good vibes your way too, so you can call it in more.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Awesome. See you on the
Talk to you
next one,
later.
guys. Bye.
Bye.